Hello, hello. Welcome back to Adobe Live. I'm joined from yet another hotel room. This time we're in Japan again, back in Tokyo, and I'm in a very small, very teeny tiny hotel room. I think I've got USB cables longer than some of the walls in this room. But we're gonna have a fun little stream. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. I am launching this stream by myself. We've got a fun little setup here, and yeah, we should be loud and clear, and we're going to be going through all sorts of Lightroom workflows for efficiency. If you're new around Adobe Live, then welcome. My name is Joe Allam, and you can come and join us in the chat over on behance.net/live. Will be the currently active chat, and yeah, we'll be going through and having a bit of a community discussion on things. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe. I'm a travel filmmaker and photographer. I post a lot of content on my YouTube channel about travel photography, and I use Lightroom most days of the week, along with plenty of other Adobe apps and other things. And I am a big advocate for efficient workflows. Anything that you have to do twice is a bit of a pain. And so I try and minimize all sorts of friction for good workflows that allow you to, do the stuff that you need to do, which in terms of Lightroom comes to editing your photos, processing your photos, organizing everything, everything combined. There's a lot of repetitive processes, and so I want to reduce any sort of repetition as possible, and I'm trying my hardest not to actually repeat what I'm saying as I'm doing this. So yeah. A big aspect of what I live by is a thing called DRY, which is don't repeat yourself. And working efficiently is a main sort of aspect of that. If you could imagine a workflow chart of, I'm going to do the XY axes for your benefit. Over on your Y axis, this is going to be the amount of work done. And on your X axis is going to be the time spent. There's a lot of setup time on things, and then suddenly it rockets. So all of the setup that you can do allows for greater efficiencies, and you can make your future self thank your past self. That is a motto that I live by. Cool. So let's jump into it. I'm going to rearrange my desktop just a moment, just so that I can keep an eye on the chat, because we have plenty of people in the chat. So hello to Sean, Gareth, Oliver, Stuart, and Melanie. Hello. Kirsty, hello, and Stuart, Tim's back in the chat. Hello. Hope everyone's doing mighty fine. It is a quite a pleasant evening here in Tokyo, actually. I'm here for another few weeks or so, and I'm capturing plenty of images and videos and all sorts, and yeah, it's gonna be a few hotel rooms and all sorts as I'm doing some live streams, because I'm gonna be here for Monday, Tuesday, and no, it's not Monday. Oh, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'm gonna be doing some live streams. So let's jump to my screen share, and hopefully we can do that if I can get my second screen to work. And typical fashion, it's just decided to turn itself off. Let's jump over, and where is my cursor? Oh, why does this happen immediately? Okay, here we go. Screen share. Boom. Right, and whilst we're doing this, let's also open up the chat so I can see you all. And yeah, so Lightroom. Of course, Lightroom is brilliant for organizing, editing your photos, but there's plenty of efficient processes and workflows that you can do. And I'm going to run you through some of my favorites on the import process, on your editing, on your exporting, and maybe there'll be a few in there that you might not know about. So we're going to try and catch a few people out. Not intentionally, of course. I'm just going to show some processes and see how it works. So, as you can see, let me close my navigator a little bit, and let me close my folders. So as we can see, at the moment, I'm running a library that has the start of 2023 and all of my travels from 2022, which of course are all organized by country, and then by city or event or anything specific there. And this is, think of this as sort of the end goal. So I want to import my photos. I want to bring them into collections. So I've got 2023 as a collection. Then I have another collection set here, which is my locations. And then beyond that, I have a further collection set, which is country specific, and that one is Japan. And then I have a collection, which is the city. So currently in Tokyo, and been here for the last week working on a pretty fun projects, actually. If you've been following my Instagram, you'd have seen plenty of stories driving around Tokyo in a Mazda MX-5. It's been quite the experience, and I'm just going to show you now because this is a beautiful car, and I've been working on a film project around Tokyo. So these are some behind the scenes images. You'll actually be the first people to see this. Yeah, if anyone's driven one of these cars, you'll know just how fun they are. They are nippy little ones. Yeah. So yeah, this is the end goal of what we're looking to achieve from the import process. So I'm going to go through some import presets and efficiencies and workflows first of all. So I've got a memory card plugged in here, and if I go into my import window, and then let's open up the memory card here, which is just untitled, and there's plenty of images in here, and I actually did a time lapse on this memory card as well. So there's about 1,000 images that all look very much the same. So let's just first of all uncheck everything, and we're going to import. Let's not go for too many. Let's just start from a random amount there, because I don't want to waste your time with the actual import. So these are the images that we're going to be editing, or rather importing into Lightroom. So as a quick overview, on our import window, we've got building the smart previews. I use that a lot because quite often I leave my files on an external drive, and I have my Lightroom library accessible locally. So when it builds smart previews, what it does is it builds those smart previews into the library file, which means that if the actual image file themselves are not accessible because I haven't plugged that drive in, I can still edit my photos. I can edit with the smart previews. They're not as high quality as the original file, but in a pinch, it allows you to just quickly open your laptop and get working on things. So I'm a big fan of the smart previews, and it allows for a smooth process. It does add up to a little bit extra storage space required, but anyway, that's just a downside to it, to the benefit, really. Right. So I'm going to import with Smart Previews, and I'm going to add to my collection. So as you see, I've already got my collections organized here, and I'm going to be going into my Tokyo. And then first things first, I'm going to rename my files. And this is where you can start to see that I've got some templating happening. So this is where I'm going to be, starting my efficiencies. So rather than just using the standard file name here, which is dscf 9419.raf, that lovely, memorable file name, I'm going to rename them. And I've spoken about this before, but as a quick refresher, the reason for renaming your files is because if ever you happen to move these files, or you maybe lose them somewhere, you have them on various external drives and then they lose connection or anything like that, you need as best a helping hand for your future self to relocate these files as soon as possible. And so what I like to do is give them as unique an identifier as a file name as possible, because the trouble is these dscf 9418.raf, they refresh. So when this camera reaches 10,000 photos, which, as you can see, this particular memory card is very close to that. It's about 574 images away, 64 images away, rather, from reaching that 10,000 file limit. And what happens is it then refreshes and goes to DCF 0001. If in your hundreds of thousands of images that you may have on your external drives and other things, if you happen to lose your file and then you go to relocate, well, that's going to be a problem. If you've got multiple file names that are one.jpg or one.raf, you're never going to know which one was the right one. And so I want to give this as unique an identifier as possible. So in our file renaming, if we go into our edit, I'm just going to show you what we're doing here. So this is our file name template editor, and I'm going to be taking the shoot date of that image, so taking from the camera the time, or rather the date of this. So I've got the year dash month dash day underscore, and then I'm pulling in the camera model name underscore, and then I'm bringing in a custom text, which I'll get to in a moment, and then the original file name. So the way that these are created is, if we just delete all of these, is we input some of these conditional features of our file renaming. So we've got an example happening here, and I've just deleted this, so we're going to start from scratch. If I just put test underscore, you'll see that every file that gets imported is going to be renamed to test underscore. Now, of course, that doesn't solve our problem, because now every file is going to have the same file name, and they're going to overwrite each other, and we're going to end up with just one. Or rather, we may end up with one and then a numerical addition to it. But we've got some tools here. If we drop down into our area below, we can add in the original file name, and I can just press insert. And you see that now adds into this example here. We got test underscore and then the original file name. And so this way we can start to build our own custom file name. And we've got other options here. So we've got image sequencing as a number, so it'll start from 0 based on your import. Or we can add in metadata such as the year, month, day. You can do that as a compound. I personally don't like seeing it all as one digit. So as an 8-character date, I find it a bit confusing when I see just a string of numbers. So I like to input them separately. So doing, in fact, let's just build this, and we can use our cursor to just go back and forth. So let's go the year, and then add in a dash, and then let's do double month, and then add in another dash, and then do double day, and then add in an underscore. So I like to do a separation of this, and I can see here in my example file name, I've got 2023, April the 4th, and then it'll put the original number. Now this is already a great starting point, because as we import, we can then have a unique and specific file name that we can reference later if ever we move those files, if ever you lose them. Honestly, this has saved me so many times when I plug in a drive and I've changed the folder name, or I've moved the file somewhere else, and I think, where was this originally connected? I can just dive straight in and I can see that file name with the date specifically. But I go one step further and I add in some custom text. So if we just hit insert, we get a custom text module here. We can add another underscore, and now we've got untitled in here because we've not actually added any custom text yet. But this is something that we can work with. You could even add in a shoot name as well if you wanted to. These are just pre-created with Lightroom. So file renaming, I use a ton, to the point that you can see that I've actually created and saved these file custom setups as their own presets. So Lightroom presets are not just about edit presets. You've got presets all over the place. You can do file names, you can do exports, you can do brushes, you can do all sorts of things. And we're going to try our best to go through a few of these in the next, we've got 30 minutes left now. So I've already got these saved, and let me just re-click onto this one. And you see that there was one thing that I actually forgot to add just then, which was the camera model. Now this I find more personal. It doesn't really make a huge difference. It's more just a case of I can quickly see, without jumping back to the grid view, the library view, what camera is used to take this image. Because sometimes that does dictate how far I may push and edit, because I know that some of my newer cameras can be a little bit more flexible. Or maybe I'm just curious to know what camera was used. I'm like, wow, this looked like a great image, and then I realized it was on my X100, and I'm like, okay, that was a 23mm focal length. Or maybe I look at it and I'm like, wow, this looks like a terrible image, and then I look at it and it was on my X100, and I think, wow, what am I doing sometimes? So having the model name is useful in the file name. And yeah, this is my preset. So you're going to see this sort of setup multiple times. So I'm not going to run through specifically each time, but you can see that we've got our chosen option here. If we happen to make any changes, so if we just add extra details here, you see that it's now listed as edited. We can update that existing preset and it's going to now add those changes, or we can restore back to our previous default. In fact, that might restore all of them. But we can restore back to what I previously had just by clicking the option here. Cool. So let's just cancel that and leave it on our preset. So now what it's going to do is it's going to rename every file. And we've got this custom text option here. And in here, I actually just like to add in the country dash the city. This is just a personal preference of mine, and it's something that I've been super disciplined on for a long time now. So that all of my files will just have that reverse date, the model, the country, the city, and then the original file name. And there we go. That's how it's going to be renamed. Now we can also do some Lightroom edit presets. Now I'm going to assume that most people know about Lightroom presets in this format. So on import, it could be that you always want to add a specific crop to your images, or it could be that maybe you always want to apply a particular, in my case, Fujifilm film simulation. You may want to always apply that because by standard it goes for Adobe Color. Yeah, so you can apply develop settings. I don't tend to do that because I have one extra thing that I'll try and remember to come to in a moment. Because I don't think it would be active right now. Oh, it could be. It could be. Let's go presets. So as I mentioned, I shoot Fujifilm, and Fujifilm has film simulations in all of your in all of the cameras. But when you import, it doesn't honor those film simulations. It just uses an Adobe sort of default color profile. Whereas I want it to match up as close as possible to a particular film simulation. I frequently, if not all the time, shoot in Classic Chrome. So what I've got here, if we go into our Lightroom and then Preferences, in the Presets tab, I've actually set it so that every time one of my Fujifilm cameras is imported, I actually override the global settings for these specific cameras. And what it does is it applies one of my presets. And I just happen to have created a preset that just changes the camera profile. That's all it does. And so I just apply that preset. You could apply an edit preset, and so every image from that specific camera has that edit preset applied. In my case, I just use the film simulation. That gives me a good base to work with, and I can change it for any of my other cameras, and you can see how you want them to be applied. And likewise, you can just update them and delete them as you want. So you can see that my current Fujifilm cameras that I've got in circulation, in fact I actually sold my X-T4, so just these two cameras, they will apply Classic Chrome. So jumping back to our import window, so this again, this were the develop settings. It's already applying based on the camera those presets. If I added another one, I believe what it does is it compounds it. So if, for example, I'm adding my Fujifilm film simulation preset and then it adds a develop settings preset, it's going to compound all those additional edits and effects, including, and I think this is right, any new film simulation options that may exist. So this one will be the secondary application, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Following on from that, we've got some metadata here. So we can add in different levels of metadata. So I can go into my edit presets. And again, very similar interface at the top. We've got all these different options that I can work with. And I can scroll through, and any metadata that I'd like to add, I can just type in and I can add all sorts of details. So I actually have one here for Japan, Tokyo, and that adds in any sorts of details that I'd like to be embedded into every file. I don't go too far on this, just a few details really, but I'm adding that metadata into there. Likewise, I've got some keywords that I may want to add. So let's go for, again, continent, country, city. Maybe let's leave it at that for now. And that's all good. And then I'm importing into my specific location. Again, this can be up to you, but one area that I want to draw your attention to is I put it into a subfolder. So I'm going into a specific media library folder into the current year, and then I've created specific folders for each of the locations. I'm not changing around too much, so it's no hassle, but if you wanted to create a new one, you can always right click, create, and if we go back to here, I can create a new folder location, and it just creates my locations just here. But I've got my locations Japan set, and then it's going into a subfolder and it's going into a date format. So you can see it's going to predict here all the different folders that it's going to create. Cool. So that's a lot of legwork in terms of setting up your import process, and that took us probably 5 minutes or so, 7 minutes to go through. Isn't that a pain to do that a second time? I hate stuff like this. So what I do is down in the bottom right, we've got this option here to create some presets. So I can actually save all of these current presets as a new import preset. So I'm going to call this one Adobe Test. Let's call this one Japan. Hit create. And now we've got this option here, and all of these settings that are applied over on the right hand side, they're going to be set again when we import another time. And you can see that I've created some others here. So if we jump to, let's say, what have I got here? We could do the previous project I worked on, Mazda project in France. By selecting my preset down in the bottom, you'll see it's now updated. And now we're no longer putting it into our Japan, Tokyo collection. We're putting it into the France Mazda road trip collection. And the custom text is now France Mazda. And our metadata is just my blank Joe Allam one. It's not country specific. And I do that sometimes because if I'm only in a location for a short amount of time, I don't need to create a preset. I find myself in Tokyo many, many times. So I do have metadata presets for that. Then we've got some keywords here. So I've added in keywords for Europe, Mazda's commercial project, France, Paris. I could add in any extra thing as well. And likewise, it's going into my location folder here, Mazda. So in a single operation, I can change any sort of repeating process that I'm doing. And this is by far one of the most efficient things that I have on my Lightroom setup that allows me to just import my photos. And for one thing, it stops me having Lightroom anxiety of thinking, oh, I've got to import this, like, it's going to take a long time to do and I can't be bothered to do it. I've removed all of that friction. I know that I can plug in the memory card. It's going to find my duplicates, and then I can just choose my preset thing and it's just going to stick with it. Secondly, it's going to be consistent. So I'm not going to forget a certain step sometimes. It's going to be the same every time. And consistency is the key to a very smooth process and workflow. So I'm all about consistency, and having these import presets is a massive deal. So we can just import these, and likewise, if I make any changes, so let's say we add in a different keyword. So let's add in Adobe Live as a keyword. You see that's now listed as edited, and once again, similar to the previous interface design, we can update that preset based on the new data that we've added, or just for this one import only, it's going to apply those changes that I've made. So a reason that I find this quite useful is because as I'm creating libraries that may transcend between different years, so 2022 to 2023, I've got similar folder structures for Japan 2022 as I do for Japan 2023. So I can just use my 2022 settings, and all I do is just change which collection it's going into in my 2023 setting and which folder it's going into. And so there we have it. I can update from last year's settings to this year, and it works really well for me. So let's just import this now, and hopefully it's not going to take too long. I'm actually using the built-in SD card reader rather than my external one. The external one is about 5 times faster, and I love it. But unfortunately, I've got too many devices plugged in here that I've lost any available ports. Tim in the chat, loving the Lightroom anxiety. It's something that I actually struggled with a lot for a little while. I just found myself not editing or not wanting to edit because I don't know, I maybe had too many photos or just too much going on in a single Lightroom library. I was like, I need to remove some of this friction, and it makes it far smoother. And Kirsty also loving Lightroom presets. Absolutely, there are so many ways that you can make your life efficient, and it's not just about editing. Organization is a big part to this. So we've imported our photos. We're in our Tokyo folder, and now let's jump onto some extra presets that we want to work with. So these images here, these are actually images that I'm going to be using for a thumbnail for a video. So let's just take a random one of these and let's go into our develop module. So as we'll all know, in fact that's a JPEG, let's go into a RAW. So as we all know, Lightroom presets are ways that you can have specific edits within your develop module available to you consistently and frequently. So I've previously created some of these, so let's just go for, what one's going to work? Let's just go for Cozy Chrome 2 that I've made, and by clicking on my preset over here on the left, you'll see that it's applied all of these specific develop settings. Plenty of presets available from some of your favorite creators and other stuff, but I also encourage you to make your own. If you find yourself doing the same edits over and over again, particularly with color and the tone curve and things like that, then you'll want to create a preset. So how do you make a preset? Well, you make all of your adjustments that you want to do in your develop. So in fact, this particular image, I actually don't want it going as dark. So I'm going to bring the shadows back, drop the highlights down, and let's drop the contrast. So let's just say I've made a whole host of edit adjustments in my develop module. Over on the left-hand side in my presets tab, I can create a brand new preset, and these are going to be all of the settings that I'm choosing to apply, available as a one-click process. So let's call this one Adobe Live Test. I can put it into a folder. So in fact, I'm just going to put it into my user presets, and I can apply any adjustment that I've made. So quite often I don't actually want to apply white balance as a preset. Sometimes, you know, if you're using the same preset on images that are outside or inside, or, you know, fluorescent tube lighting and other things, it's not best practice really to include white balance. And likewise, I probably wouldn't do detail, simply because different cameras have different sharpening that's required of them, and the same for lens corrections. And that, I think, is good. Sometimes I leave calibration on or off, depending on what I'm working with, but for the most part, I leave it on. So I create this new development preset, hit create, and now if we look in our sidebar and we go to my user presets, which should be at the top, and then go to another raw file, such as this one, and just hit Adobe Live Test or even hover over it, you see that those edits were applied immediately, simply because they were all saved as a preset. So if you're making the same adjustments over and over again, Lightroom presets in this format are going to save you a ton of time, and you can create consistency in your style, and then I can further tweak things and make extra adjustments. So that's an overall for the preset as an edit, but we can also do specific presets. So let's now jump into our masking options here, and I'm just going to do brush, and I'm just going to brush over onto my sort of jacket area, and I want to boost this ever so slightly. So I can just go and increase my shadows. So I'm just going to increase my shadows just a little bit. I mean, we can go really far if we want to totally see it. Boost the exposure a little bit and drop some of the contrast. And let's just see what this is doing. So just a tiny little amount, but I can save these settings as a preset. So if I go into my effect option here, you see that there's actually some that already come with Lightroom, but I can save the current settings as a new preset. And I'm just going to call this one Shadow Boost Slight. Hit create. And now if I happen to go onto another random image, hit my mask and create a brush, you see that my shadow boost is actually previously selected already, but we can go to something else, and you can come back to, where is it? Shadow boost lights. We can come back to it, and now as I brush in, any of these adjustments that I make should bring in those adjustments that I made previously. So again, very slight, but you can see as I'm toggling this area of the shadows is just being boosted. And so this is another area of Lightroom that you can create presets. And so these effect presets that we're making here aren't just for the brushes, but they're also for the other masking options. So I could go linear gradient, and I can drag up from here. And again, I can choose the effect, and we can go for shadow boost slight. And now it's applying it here. And so you can imagine that if I made multiple presets, I could have ones for specific things that I'm constantly doing. It could be that I'm constantly reducing some of the highlights in skin tones, or it could be that I'm constantly boosting the shadows on things, or maybe I'm always just shifting the hue on various things, or reducing the sharpness, or dropping the contrast in local areas of an image. If I'm always making those same adjustments, why not make a preset of it? And then you can save time, and your future self can thank you. So these are some areas within editing that you can save plenty of time. But we can also save time elsewhere in our export process and how we process all of our images combined. So let's say we've got, I don't know, again, let's just go for one of these random images. We right click on it and we go to export, and we open up the export dialog. We've got plenty of options here, and funnily enough, right down the left hand side we've got Lightroom presets again. So within our presets we've got a variety of different things, and I've got plenty here that I've created. And once again, it's going to utilize the same settings that I've previously set for when I hit that single export button. So I'm just going to run you through a couple that I've got here, and some that I use very, very frequently. So Instagram. When you upload your photos to Instagram, you never want to put the highest resolution that came from your camera, because what's probably going to happen is that file is going to get crushed and compressed, and Instagram is just not going to do it justice, and it's just not going to look good. So what you actually want to do when you export from Lightroom is you want to reduce that file size down in terms of the dimensions, the resolution of it. You want to reduce it down, and you want to reduce the actual file size in terms of the weight, the file size. It's hard to talk about file size when something has a physical dimension as well. But you want to reduce that down so that Instagram doesn't compress it. And I'm losing my voice. I'm just gonna have a little drink. So when you upload to Instagram, you want that smaller file size, but also I want to just, again, give it a specific file name and other things so that we can stay on top of where things are going. So in our export settings, we've got the export location, and I'm going to put it in a specific folder. Now, I've shared about this before. I utilize a process, and I've done this for over 10 years now, of an export bin. So within my file management, if I go into I think it's in my documents actually, which are in iCloud. Okay. So within my documents folder, I actually have an export bin, which is just a folder I created, and then I've got plenty of other sort of folder structures and other things that happen here. The reason for the export bin is that with all of the applications that I use where I export my files and processes and everything, rather than them just going out to all sorts of random places, the existing project file, the previous project file, or some other folder location, I want to have a universal export bin so that everything is just constantly going into the same place. It's a little bit like having an old-fashioned outbox tray on your desk, where the paperwork just goes onto there and then it gets picked up and then moved and positioned somewhere. Because there are countless times where when you're in a hurry and you're working on something and it's got to be out like quick, when you hit export, you don't want to lose any time trying to find that file. You don't want to accidentally send the wrong file, or you don't want to maybe send the old file. You want the latest one every single time. So having an export bin is a super efficient workflow to have. And then I specify my export bin based on the application it's coming from. So I have, as you can see here, my export bin / and then underscore Lightroom. The underscore there just puts the folder at the top, no matter which device you're looking on. It's alphabetically higher up. And then within there, I put it into an Instagram. And so whenever I export, I know where things are going and where, if I'm looking for a specific thing, I'm like, yes. So I just exported an Instagram. It's going to go into my Instagram folder. If, say, in 10, 20 minutes time, I'm like, where's that Instagram file? I know exactly where it is. It's going to be in here. It just specifies things down further. And then from there, that's where I go and I manually go and organize it and stay up to date. And you can see sometimes I slack on this and I haven't actually updated for a very long time. These are images that have been there for a while. But I know that chronologically, they're always going to be there based on the very, last file that's within there, because I'm using the file renaming. So then we come down to our renaming. And again, we've got our custom settings that we've used previously. And this time I rename on, what do I do for Instagram? Actually, I don't think I do anything. I think I use the existing file name as it is. Sometimes if I'm doing an export process that is reducing the file size, I may actually just put the dimensions in the file name as well. But in this case, I'm not doing anything. And I'm leaving JPEG settings because I want to upload as a JPEG. I actually leave the quality at 100. Some people say you can get by with 80 or 70 or so. I've found no issue either or, whether I go for lower quality, probably down to about 70, or higher to 100. Yes, you save a bit of file size, but I haven't seen any further compression on Instagram, so I'm pretty happy to just leave it as 100%, and why not? But where it does make sense is if you resize your image. So I'm going to resize the longest edge of the file. So if that's a vertical, it will be the height of the image to 1920 pixels. If it's a horizontal image, it will be the width of the image set to 1920 pixels. And so I set the longest edge to 1920 because when you upload to Instagram, it will resize your image anyway to fit, I believe, within 1920 by 1080, and it does a 4:5 crop within that for a standard photo. In fact, it could actually be adjusted recently, but I haven't seen any issue of doing any less than this. And likewise, I leave it at 1920 because if I want to post, say on my Instagram stories, those are in 1920 by 1080 as a resolution. So I leave the longest edge as 1920. Resolution doesn't make a difference here. 72 pixels per inch honestly doesn't matter because it depends on the screen that you're looking at. If it's 300 pixels per inch, your screen is going to display it at the format of the screen. An Apple Retina display is about 320 odd pixels per inch, so putting it in the file name makes no difference whatsoever. Sharpen for screen, that's just a digital process that Lightroom does because Instagram is a digital app. It's not going print anywhere, so we want to apply this. And then include metadata and other things. So we adjust all our settings here, and just like in the develop module previously, we make all our changes, and then we can either add and create a brand new preset, and we can organize in different folders, or we can right click an existing one and we can update with the current settings. So it's quite key to do this if you make any changes, to always remember to actually update with the current settings. So I can see I've got ones for Instagram here. These are some of my resize ones. So if we just click onto this is my JPEG 1000 pixels, which resizes the image to 1000 pixels, just for those times when you have to upload a file to a particular website and it's asking for your artwork, and they say, we can only accept a file that's 1000 pixels long or whatever. I've just got these options here, and they've always saved me because I know it's a process that I would always have to do sometime again in the future. Then I have my JPEG export bin, which is a full resolution JPEG, full quality, of course in JPEG. I also have some for RAW, I have some for TIFFs. These ones include particular color spaces for paper stock that I may be printing on, and it applies that into a file. I've got ones that I post to Twitter, which uses slightly different compression than Instagram, and yeah, a whole host of things. And if I wanted to, I could actually tick multiple, and I could export that same file in various different formats based on my export settings, and it's going to put it in all my different folders and other things. And there we go. You've got your efficient process to get your files out consistently. And as I keep mentioning, all of these things are options that I'm using every single time I use Lightroom. So if I wanted to quickly export this, I could right click on a file and I could go to my export, and I've got all my options here. And so I can just hit, boom, Instagram. It's going to export that file. If I go to my Finder, scroll to the bottom, there's that new file, and there it is. Just remembered actually in the original file renaming, I do actually add _IG and then my Instagram username, just because sometimes they do end up elsewhere, and I want to make sure that my username is at least visible to whoever may have it. If I'm working with different brands and they want to post those files on their own profile and whatever. Yeah, and so that is a quick in and out of my efficient workflows and key tips for Lightroom for importing, organizing, editing, and exporting. Quite literally, that is your round trip through the whole process. So I hope this has been fundamentally quite useful for you, and I'll be back again tomorrow. We've got more crash courses, so 45-minute streams, and of course also on Thursday as well. Yeah, those will be some fun streams from yet another hotel room here in Japan. For now though, in 15 minutes time, we've got the first of a masterclass series for Urban Nights, so make sure you stick around on Behance and go and join in with that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you some other time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Catch you later. I'm going to work out how to close the stream without breaking it all.